maybe if you don't want to talk, you could just listen.
Alright gang, what is happening? I am Mal Foster and you, as always, are listening to the latest episode of Dimed Out. This is Season 2, Episode 2, and it is our very last episode of this awful, wretched year. That's right, we are on the very precipice of kicking the stinking tuchus of 2020 right into the void of time. Hopefully, for the most part, not to be remembered. I say for the most part because I think we can all agree that huge chunks of this year have been an absolute shit barrel. But, hopefully, everybody has found something to give them solace, give them comfort, give them joy, give them an escape, give them a sense of love, give them a laugh, give them something that they will carry on from this year into the next and far beyond, whether that is something they've realised and discovered within, or if that's an external thing, whatever it is. That's what we're talking about in this week's episode. We are not going to sit here and lament about the awful that has been this year, because what is the point? We've been through it, we've got to the other side, and now we are moving forward. But we are going to take some things from this year, and those things are going to be absolute positive jewels, diamonds in the dirt, as it were. So that's what this episode is. It is a proverbial time capsule in which myself and 4 previous guests from Season 1 are going to contribute 2 items apiece and throw them into our, as I say, proverbial time capsule. Now, the items in question can pretty much be anything, and they are, as you will find out, they range from films and TV to hobbies to abstract concepts and personal discoveries. Yeah, there's quite the gamut on display here, and I love that, because it really shouldn't be confined to just conventional or pragmatic or tactile things. It should be anything that you have found or discovered. And I say you because I want you to get involved. You see, the time capsule has not actually gone into the ground yet, and we also still have plenty of space. So we need you guys to help fill it up. So what I want from you guys are 2 things that you have found this year. And again, it can be anything. It can be a tangible thing. It can be an abstract concept. It can just be a realization about yourself. It can be whatever it is you want it to be, as long as, 1, it is positive. 2, you discovered it this year, meaning it can be centuries old. But if you came across it this year, if you discovered it this year, it is eligible to go into the time capsule. So yeah, think about it. It can be difficult. I realised this when I sat down to do my own 2 items, that it was actually kind of hard to whittle it down. So yeah, give it a good thought, and when you've got your 2, let me know what you want to throw into the time capsule by getting in touch with me on Twitter or Instagram at @IamMalFoster. So, as I said, it's going to be me, and it's going to be 4 previous guests from Season 1, and those guests are, in no particular order, Andi, who came on to talk about serial killers and cults and Heaven's Gate. And by the way, just as a side note, if you have HBO Max, other streaming services are available, but if you do have HBO Max, definitely check out their 4-part mini documentary series on Heaven's Gate. Fantastic. Anyway, so that's Andi. You will probably remember her if you are an OG dimer. If not, this is what she sounds like, just so you can recognize her when she appears in the episode.
Well, okay, I thought about this and I wrote them down already.
Also have 2 contributions from
Daniel Sarath,
who came on for episode 4, I believe, and we talked all things film, we talked about documentaries, and we talked about his time traveling around Japan. All of these are fantastic episodes, by the way. Obviously, I have a certain personal bias, but if you haven't listened to these episodes that these guys fully feature on, definitely check them out. You are also going to be hearing from Rachel, our absolutely beloved New Age explorer.
I'm Rachel. I'm the Fippy from episode,
21 and 22, to talk about starting her own eco-friendly business and to talk about all kinds of woo-woo stuff. So yeah, if you like your woo-woo stuff, definitely check out that episode. If you're thinking of starting a new business in 2021, definitely check out episode 21. which is, wow, didn't even mean to line it up like that. But hey, maybe it's kismet, maybe it's fate. Who knows? Maybe it is just all these woo-woo elements lining up. And last, but by no means whatsoever least, we have
Joe Myers,
who was our featured guest for our Halloween episode. Absolute joy to sit down with Joe again and talk about his 2 picks. If you haven't, then do go check out the Halloween episode. I know it's not seasonally appropriate right now, but it is, because let's be real, Halloween is every day, at least in my heart. And of course, I shall be contributing 2 items, which we're going to do right now. I'm going to kick things off. We're going to do them in 2 separate rounds. And everyone's going to get to go twice, including myself. And let's get into it. Let's kick this off. Let's crack open the time capsule and let's put the first thing in, courtesy of me, myself, and I. So the first official item into our proverbial 2020 time capsule and my first round pick is somewhat of an obscure choice, but it is something that is absolutely near and dear to my heart. It is something that has just absolutely won me over, and that I love this so dearly, and I cannot believe it took me 17 years to discover its existence. The first item that I am throwing into the time capsule is the BBC short-lived, sadly short-lived, tragically short-lived sitcom Early Doors. So Early Doors ran between 2003 and 2004. It ran for 2 seasons, and in typical British format, it was 6 episodes apiece, meaning it's only 12 episodes in total, which is a crying shame, because everybody and anybody needs to watch this. It is just absolute solid gold. So the concept for Early Doors is really simple, and I think the simplicity is just one of many reasons why this show works so well. It is, for all intents and purposes, I guess, the Northern England equivalent of Cheers. So the show centres around this old-school, pre-smoking band pub called The Grapes, and as soon as you step in through the door, at least for me, it's like, I know this place, I have frequented this place, I have been to this place many times. And I guess that's where the sort of comparison to Cheers comes from. It's a place where everybody knows your name. And it's true, they do, because the show follows a set amount of characters who constantly frequent the Grapes, and it also follows the life, the relationships, the complications, the daily comings and goings of these characters, and the landlord who runs it. So yeah, the template, the concept, the premise, it's super simple, but from that simplicity you get to build real, genuine, heartfelt characters that you, or at least I, from my experience watching it, recognise in some degree. Maybe not exactly, but I recognise different traits, I recognise different phrases, I recognise different mannerisms, behaviours, or just ways of being. There are little bits and pieces of every character in this show that I have either known on a pretty good level, or I have encountered even just fleeting while visiting pubs like The Grapes. The simplicity of the show really is a sort of breeding ground for authenticity and sincerity. And that is not just in its representation of characters, but it's just within its tone and its feel. It really is a stellar example of what I would call salt-of-the-earth writing, and in regards writing, it is written by Phil Mealy and Craig Cash. Some people will recognise Craig Cash from Mrs. Merton or The Royal Family. And for the US listeners, I don't mean The Crown on Netflix or the actual Royal Family. We're not talking about those lizards. We're talking about a Northern England sitcom that ran throughout the late 90s, early 2000s as well. Just basically, it was very, again, simple premise. Instead of a pub, it was just people sitting around their living room watching TV, talking to each other, and character building. If you know the show and you like the show, then chances are you're going to love Early Doors because of the Craig Cash writing connection, I guess, because it comes from that same source. It does feel like it's cut very much tonally and comedically from the same kind of cloth, or a very similar kind of cloth. And speaking of comedic material, outside of just its sincerity, its genuine presentation, its heartfelt, deep-rooted, salt-of-the-earth, lovable tone, it is just also consistently really, really funny throughout. From the very first scene to the end of the last episode, it is just consistently funny with a very dry, biting wit. It kind of does have a sort of national and even regional sort of brand of humour to it, in the same way that the Royal Family did, but despite that being its core root, I think it transcends. So even if you're not from the north of England, if you're not from the Manchester, Lancashire, Yorkshire area, if you are not from that part of the world, you will still find it funny because of the timing, the jokes, the contradictions within people's behaviours. It's just consistently hilarious. In a year which has felt so surreal, this has been an anchor of realism. It's been an anchor of just recognition, of sincerity, of I just love it. I just love it. And it has really found a deep spot in my heart. If 2020 has been a raging blizzard that we've all had to sort of walk through in bare feet, Early Doors is a roaring open fire and a thick, woolly blanket. Yeah, I just love this show. All right, so your first item that is going into the time capsule, what do you have for me?
Well, firstly, I forgot that it was meant to be like happy things. So one of the things that I thought, well, I had more than two, obviously, because it's me. So one of the things that I thought was that I was going to go with is a bad thing. So I'm switching it out for a good thing.
All right, well, let's put a pin in that because I'm going to come back to that and I'm going to find out what your bad thing was in a bit.
Well, it's not a bad thing. It's just not a positive thing.
It's not like murder, is it? It's not like...
Murdoch. So yes, so my first thing is I have discovered what a life of content is.
Oh, say what?
Like living a life of contentment.
Oh.
I've discovered it. I really think I have. I think if I had nothing else, like if my life was exactly as it is right now, everything that I've got, everything that it is, and it never was any different, I would die a very happy person. Obviously, when my food runs out, I want it to be replenished, so it's like always at the same level. But yeah, living a life of contentment. I feel like I've got to that level. What
is it that's actually brought you to that level? Is there anything that's happened, or is it just like a realization that just appeared? This feeling of content. What is the word?
Contentment. I think that's the word.
Sure.
I should probably have Googled that. Don't say that. Every time we speak and I use a word and you go, sure, I'm thinking you're like, nah, that's not a word.
Right, because you know fine well that I don't know a bunch of words that I end up using. So I'm just going on the natural, hopeful assumption that it's correct.
Yeah. Poetic license.
Sure, exactly. Poetic license with the English language.
Yeah, definitely. Like I think I wanted to try and stay away from the boring, like this is all because of my change in life, like my huge U-turn in life from leaving my job to working for myself. But I think it is very much a part of that, and also really a part of like lockdown and COVID as well, I guess, because I think the thing that I always wanted in my life was balance. Like, you know, when you ask yourself, like you really think about your values and you really think about what it is that you want in your life, like that's always like been the first thing that comes to mind. It's balance in everything, you know. Life can't be all good, so a balance of good and bad, and a balance of busyness and stillness, and a balance of healthy and like overindulgence. I really like that idea of having balance in your life. And I think I had a very imbalanced life with my work, and now it's a lot more balanced again.
Do you think it's a perspective thing? Do you think, obviously, because you have had such a huge, as you say, sort of alteration in your life in terms of definitely work, but also just dealing with everything else everyone's dealing with this year? Do you feel like it's become like the change in perspective has kind of given you more insight into the things that matter, and that's where your feeling of contentment comes from?
Yeah, I guess. I think it's actually a lot of things together. So I think it's partially mine and Sean's outlook on life in terms of like minimalism and living a life of less in general. I think that, coupled with being able to stop and think and stop and pause and just take in what we've got right now and think about obviously the amount of people that don't have what we have. And I think it's a culmination of different things, and I'm not 100% certain it would have happened if the lockdown and the pandemic hadn't have happened.
I'm with you on that, because as bad as it has been for everyone, and obviously it varies in different degrees of severity for different people, but I think it's been outside of all of the trials and tribulations that have come with it and what have you, I think I would at least like to hope most people, it has been an opportunity to stop and actually look around you and kind of reassess and look at what is happening around you, where you're heading, and where it is you would actually like to be heading.
Yeah, I agree, definitely. And just thinking, well, if I did lose my job, or because actually I think probably that's another thing, the worry of for a lot of people of me and my partner might lose our jobs if you have a significant other. That's been really real for everybody more than any other time, even when there's a recession.
Sure.
And so I think the thought of, well, what would actually happen if that did happen? Like, would we be okay? Obviously, this isn't for everybody because a lot of people don't even have enough of what they need anyway. But like, we take a look around and think, yeah, we have enough to be very happy, and we should be very grateful for what we have.
Yeah. I like that. It's a bit of an abstract addition to the time capsule, but I don't have an issue with that at all. But yeah, I like that.
Sorry.
No, don't be.
All of mine are a bit like that.
Don't be. I like that. We're mixing it up and we're throwing something that is very, not just timely, but something that is very poignant and has a greater sense of purpose. So yeah, I like that. The feeling of being content.
Well, okay, I thought about this and I wrote them down already.
Nice.
My things are, I finally learned how to geocache this year after many, many, many years of wanting to do it. It's a great social distancing activity.
What exactly is geocaching?
Basically, it's like an adult Easter egg hunt.
Oh.
I have an app where people log little things that they hide all around the city, and they're everywhere. So basically they give you coordinates and you find it, and usually they can range from mild to hard. So some things will be easy to find, some things will be hard to find. But once you find it, there's usually a gift inside. You can take something, but if you take something, you have to leave something. So one time I found a pill bottle that was wrapped in camouflage duct tape that had a plastic dinosaur inside.
Nice.
To leave, so I just admired the dinosaur. And then there's always a little logbook where you can write your name and see all of the people who found it before you. It is so cool. It's awesome.
So that's cool. So you add yourself to the list of people that have been there and have presumably either admired the dinosaur like you did, or perhaps someone has put the dinosaur there. So that's you swap up things out when you find them.
Yeah.
So presumably it wasn't a dinosaur to start with. It was maybe something else.
Maybe.
That is pretty interesting. What kind of things do you usually tend to find?
Usually they're very, very small magnet. Do you know those like blinking lights that you get at like a fair?
Yes.
The things that are that size, like this, that are just magnetic and they're stuck onto something.
Okay.
There's a road by my house that has a metal barrier that runs across it, and every mile there's one of those, and it's a geo. And you pick it up, and it has a little bitty tiny piece of paper in it that you can write your name on. A lot of people do pill bottles. I've seen golf balls that are hollowed out. Just basically anything you can think of that you could hide effectively.
How the hell do you hollow a golf ball out?
No idea.
Wow. I feel like that's an internet rabbit hole all of its own. I just find myself spending the rest of the afternoon watching people actually hollow out golf balls.
I don't know how they did it. It took me forever to find that one, and I actually got cuts all over my leg, but I was so dedicated because everyone kept saying it was really, really hard, and I had never found a hard geocache. So I basically had to climb the bottom half of this tree, and there's a hole, and there was just a golf ball that was cut in half.
So there's various degrees of difficulty.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like an RPG, but in real life, kind of. It's like a side quest in an RPG.
Yeah, it's so fun.
Wow. What is the strangest one you've found?
So there's one. I thought of it. I think the strangest thing was what was left in it.
Yeah.
It's really not that strange, but I found it at the hospital, the emergency exit or the emergency center in the hospital. And it was just hiding next to a light pole. And inside of it was 3 packets of crystal light powder. Why?
What? What is
Yeah.
what is crystal light powder?
The drink powders that you mix into water.
Oh.
They were in the geocache.
It's maybe for people that are doing like a marathon geocache and it's just like for endurance.
Yeah.
Maybe keeping like all the adventurers hydrated on their long epic quest.
I just don't know how comfortable I would be to drink something out of geocache.
Right. That's somebody, that's someone that you have no idea has left. You don't know exactly what's in there.
Other than that, that was probably the strangest thing I found.
Do you have a tendency to leave things yourself when you find these for other people?
Because every time I choose to go geocaching, I forget to bring something. So I admire whatever's there.
Well, here's the thing, maybe for 2021, is you can start to maybe compile some little treats, just tiny little treats for people to find when you've been.
Things like this.
What is it? Oh, that is a dog with a fireman's hat on for listeners who can't see. It's a Dalmatian, in fact. Is that? Oh, Andy just dropped it. Is that from Paw Patrol? What is that from? Wow.
I have this bad habit of finding these kind of things. This was in my laundry.
What?
Yeah, I was using the community laundry and I brought my dryer. Oh my God, I dried clothes home. And there was this, his name is, I want to say Marshall.
Sure, Fire Marshal. Makes sense.
And so I just keep him. I'm going to keep him forever.
so you just found that in your laundry? Someone left there?
Yeah.
Hopefully a child, accidentally.
I hope so. The things that I find from the community laundry are amazing. I actually had to make a box for the socks that I find to leave in the laundry room.
You are finding that many missing socks? Mm-hmm. I mean, I know this is like a big thing that is, everyone's lost a sock in the laundry, but I mean, to the point where there's that many socks going missing, it's just like a lost and found.
I felt so bad throwing people's socks away because I get at least 2 socks every time I do laundry. So I'm like, maybe other people are having this problem too. What if I
clearly
sock back?
Yeah, exactly. What you could do is, instead of making the lost and found box for these socks, you could take them and you could leave them in the geocaching for people. Just like pass them on.
Everybody needs socks.
But with a message inside the toe end of the sock. Or what you should do is take a sock, right, and we'll give me some free promotion here. You just put like the name of the website for the podcast on a piece of paper in the sock and leave it. So whenever people, found like a really hard geocache. There it is. Get it. Click, 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 open it. And then go, what the hell? There's a sock. There's something inside the sock. What? Just sheer curiosity, they dig into the sock, they pull it out, and they're like, what is this? I wonder what this website's all about. And boom, there you go, potential new listener. Through the random sock promotion.
Just for you.
Thanks. I think you should. I'd like to see this happen. You can be my on-the-street guerrilla marketing person.
The first, which I'll just do a little bit of a preamble about.
Sure.
I think I maybe mentioned this when I came on your podcast a couple of months ago, Mal, but one of the positive things about lockdown for me has been that it's kind of given me the time to get into video games, which I've never really had the time to get into before. I think my relationship with games lasted from like 97 to 2002. I got a Nintendo 64 for like my 7th birthday.
I was going to say, it's a good year. That's a good time period to be into games.
Yeah, it was. It was a Nintendo 64 was my first console, and like Super Mario 64, Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time were like my 2 first games, which are still like 2 of my favorite games.
I was going to say, man, what a good start. What a good start into your gaming life.
I think I was spoiled a little bit. But yeah, so like there was a kind of 5-year period where I was really into everything. So I, bought a bunch of the Nintendo titles like Banjo-Kazooie. I think I ended up getting a PlayStation. So I ended up playing things like Final Fantasy VII and Tony Hawk's and Metal Gear Solid. But then I kind of remember getting a GameCube, so that would have been like 2002, 2003, and just never touching it. And after that, maybe I've played a handful of games since then. We'd have some kind of like multiplayer things when I was at university with my flatmates. I would just kind of get into some of the bigger titles like GTA and Red Dead Redemption and things. But other than that, it's just not something I've had much of an interest in.
Yeah.
But during lockdown, I think because I've had more time to get into it, it's something I've sort of wanted to explore again. And like I was talking about this with one of my friends the other day, and they were like, I guess it's sort of like the immersion of it as well. Like, you sort of, you can sort of watch movies and dip yourself in for like 2 hours, or, sort of lose yourself in a book for a couple of chapters. But with games, there is something very immersive.
Sure.
I think with everything going on in the world, it's good to just sort of lose yourself in a completely different world for a little while.
Right. If you're ever going to lose yourself in a long form medium, this would be the year to do it.
Yes, exactly. So on that note, I realized there's this whole indie gaming scene, for instance, which completely passed me by. So I kind of got to get into things like What Remains of Edith Finch, A Short Hike, and Gone Home, Wild Heart Sayonara, and these sort of like little indie games. But the best thing I played, and the thing I think will sort of define my lockdown experience, was The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, which was like a kind of perfect lockdown game because it was so immersive. And it was just something that I could get lost in for hours and hours and hours. And I started the game sort of the pit of like my sort of desperation with lockdown and with like the whole state of the world. So it was a really, really therapeutic thing to like lose myself in for quite a long time. I just loved it. The thing that I hope will sort of define this year for me, more so than like COVID and all the other shit in the world.
That is a good thing to latch onto. I'm a bit of a Zelda noob, I must admit. Like, I am familiar with the music, weirdly enough, more than anything. And obviously the primary characters of Link and what have you, and the whole sort of idea of the Hyrule sort of timeline being sort of here, there, and everywhere. There was a point where I wanted to get into it, and I actually wanted to play through the games in chronological order, not of release, but of like the timeline. And then I got into this whole internet rabbit hole of different theories of, well, some people think this is the timeline, and then other people think, well, this is the timeline. And I was like, wow, okay, I feel like as good as my intentions are here, I may have just gone a little bit over my head. But what platform, like what console is that particular game on?
I've been playing it on Nintendo Switch.
Okay.
So I guess when I sort of got into games during lockdown, I figured this was probably the best thing to invest in. I was either just playing games on my laptop, which is incredibly slow and not very functional, or I have like a PlayStation 4, which I've been mostly using as like a very large sort of like smart stick, like Netflix and Amazon, and to kind of go through kind of streaming services. It wasn't kind of ideal for kind of finding like indie games and things, but I knew that the Switch store had a lot of options.
Yeah.
So I mostly bought it for that reason, but it just kind of came in a bundle with my Switch. So I thought, I'm going to give it a go. I really like Ocarina of Time, and like I have such kind of nostalgic feelings around the music. It's weird that you kind of bring that up because like that's the thing I have the strongest impressions of from that game. But I really loved it because like I think it takes a lot of the stuff that I remember and I feel very nostalgic about from the original games, but also sort of improves on that and kind of marries it with more kind of like a modern kind of gaming style. And also it's like not afraid to kind of be its own thing. Like it's not just full of sort of callbacks to original music and old characters. Like it's kind of trying to build sort of a new world as well. Like I feel like it's, a game that stands alone.
Well, being an entertainment junkie, my first item is a television series called Schitt's Creek. And I think I briefly mentioned that when we did the October episode because my films had been skewed hardcore toward horror, but any TV show I was watching were comedies. And Schitt's Creek, something that I did not start watching until this year, right after the lockdown. For anyone not aware of it, it's a show created by Dan and Eugene Levy, and it's about a family, the Rose family, who the father, played by Eugene Levy, was a video store magnate. So he created like an empire like Blockbuster from the ground up. His family was super wealthy. Catherine O'Hara played Maura, his wife, and she was a soap opera actress who was pretty famous, but it kind of past her prime. So they were just living off of all this money they had, and they found out that their finance manager was embezzling from them. They owed all this back taxes, and overnight they were destitute. And the only thing they still had in their name is, as a joke, Eugene Levy's character, Johnny, bought a town called Schitt's Creek for his son, David, played by his real life son, Dan Levy. So they end up having to go to this little tiny town, and the mayor of the town is played by Chris Elliott, who I have loved since way back in the day, and his name is Roland Shit. So everything it is kind of like play on words and just hilarious sort of circumstances. So they go from just the lap of luxury to having to live in the only hotel in town. They have adjoining rooms, one for the children and then one from themselves, and these are adult children. So I always thought that this was like some sort of parody show, because I had heard at one point Dan Levy came up with the idea. He took it to his father, Eugene, to kind of flesh it out. But the gist of it was he had been watching a ton of reality television and was like, what would the Kardashians be if overnight they lost all their money? What would they do? So in my head, I'm like, oh, this must be kind of like an Office or a Parks and Recs thing where there's a film crew following them around because, they had a show because they were rich and famous.
Right.
And then they lose everything. But the television show keeps going because now it's even more interesting that they've lost everything and they're living this destitute lifestyle. But it wasn't that at all. It was a totally scripted, just regular single camera comedy. But oh my God, the writing on it is so good. You expect it just to be kind of like a fish out of water story where like everything appalls them because like, oh my God, you're so poor. How do you live like this? And there is a little bit of that in there. But once they get that out of the way early on, it really is all about the characters and their development. I'm a sucker for finding yourself entertainment, whether it's coming of age stuff like Stand By Me or something like this show where you have adult people getting the carpet just pulled out from underneath them and having to reinvent themselves on the spot. And like they have little quirks here or there that make you go, oh my God, that character is so horrible. But they learn from everything and they grow as people over the span of the series. And it was like, I think 6 seasons, 80 episodes total, like 23-ish minutes per episode. So it's a quick watch, especially once you get into it and you start grabbing onto these characters.
I have just started this show. It's really interesting that this is one of your two because I've just started it about 2 weeks ago. I've kind of had stagnant viewing of it because December is and has been for some time the month of the year in which I look at the list of films I haven't seen yet and I'm just like, okay, I need to get these in before I make a list of 10 for the year or whatever I would be doing. So yeah, it's kind of been, my TV viewing has been sort of broken off into little bits and pieces because I'm making a little bit more extra room to cram some last minute entries for possible top 10 films of the year. So I have started it, but I'm about 4 or 5 episodes in. I have been told about this a number of times. And like you said, I kind of had in the back of my head it being somewhat of a parody. And as much as I love The Office, as much as I love Parks and Rec, and I do like that whole mockumentary style, that kind of distanced me a little bit. I was like, I don't really know if I have room for another one of those right now. And so I kind of put it off. And then we watched it. And as I say, about 4 episodes in, we haven't quite got to the growth part yet. They're still very much showcasing their horribleness. But within that horribleness, there are some absolutely fantastic one-liners and some great moments of satire. The writing, I think you're right, is just consistent. Like, it's consistently funny from what I've seen so far.
Yeah, and I think one of my favorite things is the daughter of the Rose family, Alexis, played by Annie Murphy. She was one of my favorite people to watch. Since we binged it, like we watched everything but the final season over a very short span. And then we knew that the final season was going to hit Netflix in October. And I really wanted to just buy it on iTunes and binge the whole thing. And my girlfriend Elise is like, no, you know what? We just went through the first 5 seasons pretty quick. Let's just sit for a while with it and then just watch it when it comes out. And then we kept finding ourselves going back and we would start it over and watch the first couple episodes and compare like where they started to where they were at the end of season 5 and what was going to be coming up. So it's something that normally I tend to not watch just random episodes here or there, but we'd find it on TV late at night and just watch whatever episode it was, just because we knew, like, oh my God, we're going to laugh at something in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to get in season 6, they nail the landing so well at the end of this thing. I really do think it's jumped into my top 5 to 10 of all-time series.
Wow.
But this show it's sunshine in a bottle for me. It really, I come away like my face would hurt. We would be laughing so hard at it.
There you go. I there's no further recommendation needed. I think if we were all looking for something at the end of this year, it's a bit of sunshine in a bottle. So yeah, we'll have that. That's in the time capsule, Joe. Excellent pick. So my second pick is not a tangible item. It's not a physical thing that I can throw into a time capsule. It's an event, and it's a feeling, and it's a memory that will transcend this year and all the others that follow it. The second item that I'm throwing into the time capsule is watching Liverpool FC finally win the Premier League. So a little bit of backstory for you. When I was about from the ages of about 9 to 19, yeah, a good solid decade. Yeah, I between that age gap, that window of time, I just had this obsessive compulsive love for Liverpool. Like, I was just completely immersed, more so in the younger side of that sort of spectrum of time. But yeah, I was like dyed in the wool, obsessed. And I went through such a journey with that team. At that point, the club's heyday had been and gone. Its golden age had disappeared. The victorious era of the 60s, 70s and 80s was a memory. And at that point, when I was supporting them, the team was pretty much in a rut, a pretty big rut. There were a few dips, there were a few peaks, a few valleys. There was, of course, the 96 FA Cup final against Manchester United, young 11-year-old me in the height of my supporting, so excited to see them get to the cup final, and then finding myself absolutely crushed by Eric Cantona's late goal. Still difficult to talk about. So yeah, through no choice of my own, I decided to follow this club through probably one of the worst patches of the club's history. But I stayed adamant. I still supported. I stayed strong. I believed. I had faith. I had optimism. Despite having my heart crushed in 96, I kept going. And eventually, things did fade out a little bit. As I got into my late teens, early 20s, other interests kind of crept in and took over, and I found myself distanced from Anfield, from the club, from the game as a whole, and just kind of detached for a period of time. And it wasn't really until about 5 years ago, through office banter, through doing fantasy football at work, that I kind of got myself back interested in the game and interested in the club. And the last 4 years have just kind of been pretty militant again. You know, it feels like I've gone back to that 11-year-old who, after the initial heartbreak, came back defiant, came back just full-blooded in support of this team. So the last 4 years have been a journey of their own. We came close to winning the Champions League. It didn't happen. We came back and we won the Champions League. We came close to winning the Premier League. It didn't happen. We missed out by such a neat, narrow margin. And I was like, okay, this feels familiar. We're getting close, but we're not doing it. And it felt like maybe it's just never going to happen. But this year, it did. I mean, it was a wild ride. One hell of a start to the season. Game after game after game, notching up victories, notching up 3 points, breaking records. And then, obviously, COVID happened. We had the break. And at one point, it looked like this amazing run we've been on is about to just collapse because they're not going to restart. They're going to scrap the season. And that's it. Like, the closest I have ever been in the 14 to 15 years of supporting this club came this close, and it felt like it was about to be snatched away. But then we had Project Restart, and the season finished, and it happened. It actually happened. And even now, it's still kind of surreal to even think about it, because it's been this near impossible dream that's kind of been hovering in the ether for so long that even now it's still a little bit surreal to even sit and think about it. But it did actually happen. It wasn't a dream. And granted, it was a little bit tainted by COVID. It was sad to see and feel empty, because a moment like that so many people have waited generations, decades to see, should have happened in front of a crowd. It should have had the roar of the cop in full voice. It didn't. And that's kind of heartbreaking, but it doesn't take away from the fact that it actually happened, and it doesn't take away from the feeling that seeing them lift that trophy and be declared champions again for the first time in 30 years, it doesn't take away that feeling. That is something, that is a moment, that is a memory, that is a space in time, that is an external and internal feeling that I will live with, remember, and cherish forever. All right, so for your second choice, what have we got?
So this is a very personal pick for me. It's a podcast called The King Cast. Since I was a child, have been a huge fan of Stephen King. Every single year on the podcast Macabre, we do what we call the Summer of Stephen. So June, July, and August, each one of us get a pick per month where we'll read either a short story or an entire novel of Stephen King and then compare and contrast with a film or television adaptation. The King Cast is that, but every single week. So I was sold right away. There's two co-hosts, Eric Vespi and Scott Wampler. Eric Vespi, if you're around my age and jumped in on the internet at the very early start of it, and you were a film fan, you were at some point on ain'titcoolnews.com.
Oh, yeah.
And Eric Vespi was Quint on that website. He was my favorite writer. I didn't always agree with some of his reviews, but like Roger Ebert, if I didn't, he still explained why he thought the way he did, so it would make me look at a film a little bit differently sometimes. Scott Wampler, he's written for a bunch of different places, but I knew him through Birth Movies Death. They're both huge Stephen King fans as well, so they started this podcast in May of this year, and the gist of it was exactly what we do for Summer Stephen. They were going to have guest on, talk about a short story or a novel, and compare and contrast with the television or film adaptation. Their very first guest out of the gate was Camille Nanjiani for The Running Man. Then as they kept going with it and they started banking episodes, that is the main part of what they do. But then they would have like interviews. So they would bring in people who actually worked on these Stephen King movies or whatever. And so Dee Wallace came in and did an interview talking about Cujo, which was fantastic. My all-time favorite episode is an interview they did with Thomas Jane, talking about all the various stuff, especially The Mist, which I love. And Thomas Jane is, I don't know if you've done a deep dive into him. He's one of the most free-spirited, say exactly what he wants people I've ever seen in the entertainment industry.
See, I wouldn't picture that, to be honest.
Oh my good Lord. He says exactly what he thinks on that episode about a lot of stuff. And it is fantastic to listen to. They had a Dark Tower episode with Glenn Mazzara, and then they had an episode on The Eyes of the Dragon with Seth Grahame-Smith, where those two guys were actively involved in trying to bring television series based on those books to like Amazon Prime or Hulu or wherever it was. So they would talk about the development process, what went wrong, why it didn't get picked up, and what they had planned.
That's kind of fascinating. So it's kind of like looking at what could have been but never was.
Yes. And even though I'm a huge Stephen King fan, the Dark Tower series is kind of lost on me. But it was very fun listening to Glenn talk about what they had planned at Amazon Prime and what eventually broke that down was just basically it was going to cost too much money and they didn't want to make the commitment. And I think that's when they also went with like the Lord of the Rings series that they're working on now. The other fun thing I like about this show is the guests get to pick what they talk about. So sometimes they have overlap and they'll talk about things twice. Like Pet Sematary, they've gone over 2 times now. Mallory O'Meara is a writer. She came on and spoke about it. And then just recently, within the last month or so, Anna Lily Amapur came on to talk about it as well. And it's just like hearing their origin stories with Stephen King, it's almost exactly the same. Like everyone's like, oh, I either moved around a lot or I was an only child. So I just happened to see the book in the bookstore and the cover grabbed me and I wanted to read it. It's a lot of those stories. But I'll throw out 3 episodes that I think people have to listen to if you just want to take a snippet of it and see if it's something that you want.
All right, like a sample platter of sorts.
Yes, I would definitely go with the Thomas Jane interview. That one,
yeah, for
out
sure.
of this world, fantastic. Then the next one that I'll say is Salem's Lot with Brian Fuller. I love Brian Fuller. Hannibal's one of my favorite television shows. Pushing Daisies is one of my favorite television shows. And the reason he picks Salem Lot will blow your mind, because he ties it to an actual serial killer who came to his small town where he was growing up as a boy, who got away with the murders. And he ties it to the vampire coming to this little tiny town of Salem's Lot and evil sort of infecting small towns. It is way good. Oh my God, it's way good. And the other one, and this one's going to be a little weird because it's actually a book I've not read and I've never seen the movie. And based off of what I know about it now, I don't really care to ever watch it. But there was an episode on A Good Marriage, and Kate Siegel came in and talked about it. She is a writer and an actress. She did a movie called Hush that Mike Flanagan directed. That's her husband. So they co-wrote it together. He directed it. She's been in both The Haunting of Bly Manor and Haunting of Hill House as well, so people will recognize her from there. Out of every guest they have had on this series so far, Kate's knowledge of Stephen King stuff is encyclopedic. I mean, she is just was rolling off bits here and there, and even the guys at the top said, like, we didn't know what to expect going into this, especially because of what she picked, but we're supposed to be the experts, and she puts our knowledge to shame. So those would be the three that I really like, but there's so many others. Like Richard Stanley came on to talk about Creep Show, and I absolutely adore Richard Stanley's movies. And then Alex Winter was on talking about The Dead Zone right about the time that the new Bill and Ted movie came out. So it's just all these different various people that come in. Most of them are in the business one way or the other. They bring in a lot of comedians, which is it's fun to listen to what they have to think, but directors coming in and talking about how much Stephen King influenced them and how they do their films has been kind of the highlight for me, because I just, in the back of my head, I'm like, yeah, they're just like me.
So that's your first item into the time capsule for 2020. What is your second?
My second is a television show. Again, it's one of those things where for a long time there's been a list of like big TV shows that I've really wanted to delve into. But I've mostly stuck to kind of mini-series and at most kind of like a HBO series or a Showtime series where it's, 12, 13 episodes and 5, 6 seasons. And kind of on my list have been these shows where it's, a full 24 episode season running over, 10, 11 seasons that have always seemed kind of daunting and intimidating to me, because I've just kind of wondered where I would ever find the time. And one of them in particular is Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which I've always heard was, a classic piece of television, one of the best pieces of TV ever made. But whenever I would sort of look at the sheer amount of episodes of Buffy, I'd kind of think, oh God, I don't think I could ever get into this.
Yeah.
But my girlfriend and I have been watching it, but like during lockdown, we're about maybe about 100 hours into it.
Wow.
We've watched 4 or 5, but yeah, I think for season 4, towards the end of season 4 at the moment. And I absolutely love it. I love it so much more than I ever thought I would. I think it always seemed to me like it was going to be this kind of corny late 90s thing, and it kind of is. But I really like that it sort of takes these like really relatable teen moments and emotions. Like it addresses teen angst and sort of friendships and sexuality and coming of age and trying to find your place in the world, and like blows them up into these like really good pieces of like gothic fiction. Like we just watched this episode where Willow's sort of wrestling with this idea that she's not quite as exciting as the other teenagers in the school. Everybody's kind of got this kind of fun, crazy, wild side, and she's just kind of bookish and geeky. But in like the world of Buffy, this becomes like a big story about her sort of facing her own evil doppelganger. And there's a storyline at the moment where Buffy sort of, by sleeping with Angel, may break a curse and turn him back into a vampire. And it's like, it's kind of a fun sort of gothic teen subplot, but at the same time it's sort of all about addressing your fears of losing your virginity as a teenager. So it's kind of super smart in like a really fun way. And I'm really, really enjoying it. I've really kind of thrown myself into this show.
All right, question. Do you feel like you have more of an appreciation for it now at this stage of life than you would have if you watched it when you were in the sort of core demographic for that show? So like mid-teens.
Oh, I don't know. I think I would really have liked to have been a fan when I was a teenager, because I think some of it would have really related to me in a much bigger way. But at the same time, I don't think I would have had quite an appreciation for how good its storytelling is.
Right.
If I hadn't sort of revisited it at the age I am now. Like, I think if I watched it when it came out in 98, 99, 2000, I think I would have just thought, oh, these characters are fun. I like demons and like the fight scenes are cool.
Mm-hmm.
But like now I can really kind of appreciate just how like creative some of the storytelling is. It's a really good show. It's sort of, I think by design, it's kind of formulaic. It's that kind of typical network TV thing where, you know, there's always a kind of similar, familiar structure to the show.
Right.
There's always a new demon that has to come from the Hellmouth that Buffy has to face, and they have to find some spell to get rid of it. But I like the way that it sort of gets creative with that formula. It's kind of aware of itself and makes fun of itself. I don't think I would have picked up on all that kind of stuff had I not sort of, you know, had that kind of breadth of like film and TV watching behind me now. So I don't know, like the perfect thing would have been for me to watch it at a young age and like it, and I'll be revisiting it, I guess. But no, yeah, I'm really, really loving it.
Your second thing, I was not expecting this. I'll be honest. I mean, I didn't really come in with any preconceptions for anybody, but I was not expecting this. Budgeting software that you genuinely, and I'm not just saying this for effect, listeners, Andi is genuinely excited by this. I can see it in her face that this thing has actually brought her a lot of joy this year. But why is that?
Yeah, I just really like it. They interviewed me a few weeks ago. So the software is called YNAB.
I was going to say, let's give it a shout out. It's called what did you say?
YNAB, YNAB, but it's pronounced. It's called You Need a Budget, and I was kind of aimlessly searching for a budget on the App Store, and I found it, and I was like, I downloaded it, and I was like, this seems really hard to use. So then I went on a quest of learning how to use it, and it was so rewarding. And also I've been really successful with it. And then there's like a really great community with it. The people on the subreddit it's kind of like a cult. That's what we call it. But it's awesome. I love it so much.
What exactly do you do with it though? Is it just literally you break down your expenditures and your income?
Well, it's actually, so there's 4 tenets of it, but it's zero-based budgeting. So their tagline is give every dollar a job. So every time you get paid, you budget every single dollar to different categories.
Okay.
So like you start with your fixed expenses. So like your rent or your mortgage, the things that you know are the same cost you have to do every month. And then you go to things that happen monthly, but may not have a set cost. And then you budget for the yearly expenses as well. So you always stay prepared. And then the really fun part is that you can save for the things that you want. So everything is savings based, and you get it's goals. So like once you reach your goal, you get that satisfaction of I saved $25 to spend on whatever. Mm-hmm. Really, really rewarding to do that.
So I guess it's kind of not only good for you in terms of your budgeting, in terms of managing your finances, but I suppose there's that sort of micro trigger of psychology in there that you get with like I've done this towards that. It's like almost an achievement of sorts because you've kind of done that little thing, which then leads on to something else. Exactly.
And I was already budgeting, so this just made it so much easier.
Why nab?
Yeah.
Well, I say why not? So what have you got for your second item?
Again, it's very...
Is it a bit woo-woo?
It is a bit woo-woo.
Oh, sweet.
What else would you expect?
That's what I was hoping for.
It's a bit about manifestation. Like I've discovered that what you give out, you do get back. So to explain,
yes, please do. Is this some sort of karmic power source? Some karma? I don't know how you would describe that. Some sort of karmic behavior.
Well, it's there's a lot of stuff about this in terms of like mirroring and stuff. So when you speak to people, if you speak to them in the way that you want to be spoken to, you get it back and all that sort of stuff. So it's quite a well-known concept. But what I found is I've been very active in different sort of Facebook groups and on Instagram, and also attending a lot of like virtual festivals for like the sustainable world, for ethical businesses, joined like a membership club for ethical businesses, went to an ecopreneur summit, went to a virtual networking event as well. So I've been to a lot of different places without leaving my house and met a huge array of people. And I've found that like by being active in these places, and I've been giving people advice, I've been giving people help, I've not just sat back and watched the world go by and taken it in, and I've been vocal in like reaching out and helping people. Like I reached out to my first few clients to help them and didn't charge them as much, or didn't charge them straight away, and just while I'm building myself up. So I've been giving a lot, I feel like, and I'm naturally getting stuff back, like nice things are happening. So I'm getting clients through referrals because people like me, because I'm nice and I'm helpful. Other businesses are reaching out, like I'll put a post on and they'll ask me a couple of questions around the topic, and I'll give them some pointers of what I know, even if I don't really know everything. And they'll come back and say, oh, offer me some support and some help. A lady who is very prominent in business consulting world for retail, I just reached out and asked her if she'd mind having a chat with me, because I'm still starting out and I'm probably making some mistakes, and she was like, yeah, let's chat. So I feel this whole like positive manifestation, it's not really manifestation, it's like just giving out good stuff and getting back good stuff. So I feel like I've discovered that is happening.
What can we refer to this as? Because I feel like it doesn't quite have a name. What would you describe this as?
Let's put it under something like karma. Discovered karma.
Wow, you discovered karma. 2020, you became enlightened to good deeds.
Yeah.
I think there's definitely there's obviously a sense of sort of karmic elements to that for sure. It's I really don't know how I would describe it though. I suppose it's just good, and not to get too... Well, do you know what? Let's do it. It is you. Let's get too fippy. I suppose it is good energy practices.
It is, yeah. It's like you put out your good energy, you get back good energy. You put out helpfulness, you get back helpfulness. Like it's like discovering energy transfer. Positive energy transfer.
There you go. That's what I'm referring to it as. Positive energy transfer. Awesome. Pet. Get in there, pet.
You just like shortening it down, acronyming it, and everything. Acronyming?
Yeah, sure. Why not? We've already butchered the language for about 5 minutes. Why not just continue? Yeah, I do love a good acronym. Positive energy transfer. No, but that's good, and I think that's definitely a good way to go into a new year, leaving a shitty one behind, going into a hopefully, fingers crossed, much better one. I think that's something we all en masse could do with kind of throwing ourselves into a little bit more, bit of positive energy transfer.
Controversial if I say that this has been one of the best years of my life?
No, not at all. I think it's good. I think obviously as a whole, it's been a bad one for humanity.
Yes.
But I think if people come out of it and can say something like that, I want to hear that. You know what I mean? I don't feel like it's gloating. I don't feel like it's boasting. I feel like it's people taking the best out of a bad situation. And if you can do that, then all power to you. Nobody should ever suppress that. Nobody should ever condemn that. If someone has managed to get something really good out of something universally terrible, fucking A, all power to that. So there you go, guys. That's it. That is the 2020 time capsule. It's still open. The hole has not even been dug in the backyard. So as I said at the top of the show, if you want to throw things in, and I do want you to throw things into the time capsule, I want you to give me 2 positive things you've discovered this year. Those are the only rules. 2 positive things that you've discovered this year. I want you to throw them in. So the best way to do that is get in touch with me on Twitter or Instagram. Probably better on Twitter. Probably works better via Twitter. Get in touch with me on either of those at I am Mal Foster. At I am Mal Foster. Lend me your ears. Send me your tweets. I didn't know where the hell I was going with that, but yeah, send me your 2 picks for the time capsule and I'll throw them in before we bury it into the ground. Before we say goodbye to this episode and to this stinking year, before we kick it out of the door into the void, I want to say sincerely from the bottom of my heart, if you have been on board with this show either from the beginning or you've just jumped on, if you've been liking what we've done this year, because that's another thing that really I could throw in there. And you know what? Why not? It is my rules. It is my concept. I'm going to throw this in. Making this podcast is going into the time capsule because it has been a real pleasure. It's given me a sense of drive, a sense of determination, a sense of purpose, and it's allowed me to open up different conversations, dialogues with people about a whole plethora of different topics. It really has opened up my eyes and my ears and my mind to all sorts of interesting new stuff and some amazing new experiences, which is what the show is all about. And it's what the show is going to be even more about in 2021. So if you've been on board from the start or you've just joined lately, whatever, however long your tenure, thank you for listening, for supporting, and for joining me on this wonderful adventure. We have so much curious and fascinating and just mind-boggling and mind-blowing and trippy and weird and ultimately fascinating, deeply curious stuff coming your way in 2021. And the best way that you can get on board and stay on board and make sure you don't miss any of this crazy adventure is to subscribe to the show. And you can do that by finding us wherever you get your podcasts from and just subscribing. It really is that simple. It makes sure that you don't miss out. You get all the episodes sent to you without lifting a finger, and it shows a tremendous amount of support for what we're doing here. If you want to ride that train of support even further and you want to help contribute to the growth of this potentially just amazing leviathan of experience, then you can do so. And the best way to do so is we've set up a Patreon account. It is one single tier, $5 a month. And for that $5, you get quite a few things, mainly an extra episode each month, a live streamed Q&A/hangout session. You get access to the official Dimed Out Discord channel where we're going to be talking about stuff within the episode, but we're also going to be talking about what you want to see for future episodes. So for the Discord channel, I want it to be basically a sandbox for you guys to not only get little sneak peeks and little bits and pieces, little snippets of things, artwork that never made it for certain episodes, but I want you to be able to just throw in your ideas, your suggestions, your recommendations. I want it to be, as I said, an open sandbox for us to collaborate on what this show becomes. So yeah, patreon.com/dimed out, one tier, $5 a month, plenty of rewards. It's there, it's an option, it's not mandatory. If you want to join up, absolutely go for it, and I am appreciative for anybody who even considers it. But I'm just saying it is there as an option if you want to help contribute and help the show grow further. That is a possibility. If you don't, I'm absolutely fine with that as well. The regular shows are going to be free as always. That is always going to be the case. Whatever happens, the weekly shows within the seasons are always going to be free. The other stuff, it's just extras. Speaking of extra, next week's episode, Season 2, Episode 3, is going to be extra special. If you are looking to supercharge your new year, physically, mentally, spiritually, and in so many other ways, it is an episode you cannot afford to miss. If you want to kick off 2021 right, then next week's episode is one you cannot afford to miss. I'm going to be talking to Danielle Longo. She is a mindset coach. We're going to be talking about what exactly that is, what benefits that could bring to you in the new year, and we're going to be talking about all sorts of other crazy, cool, trippy, weird, fascinating stuff like lucid dreaming and the sort of merger between science and spirituality. Lots of fascinating, deeply fascinating stuff. And as I said, from her professional standpoint, she is a mindset coach. So whether you are looking to achieve some physical goals, whether you are looking to give yourself a mental upgrade, whether you are just looking to challenge yourself in some way or overcome something, or you just feel that the best way to get you off the starting blocks for 2021 is by speaking to somebody, it is honestly an absolute must listen. So yeah, you've got that to look forward to next week. Starting off the year right, baby. We're starting off the year right. Yeah, looking forward to it. Other than that, guys, as always, thank you for listening. Until next year. Actually, yeah, until next year, look after yourselves, look after each other, and keep it dimed out.